Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some historical fiction horror. I have recently discovered, in probably the last couple years, you guys, that I have been slowly really gravitating and loving the horror genre within the historical fiction genre. Um, I don't know what it is. Normally, I don't like the horror genre at all, you guys. I don't really like being scared. I don't like the slashers, for instance. I'm not really into slashers. I just don't like being scared half out of my mind. But in recent years, like I said, I don't know. There's just something about the horror genre within historical fiction that I have been just particularly really loving. I don't know what it is. I think it's just that combination of having a historical element and then having something that's scary and unknown and uncertain kind of weaving into the story. And yeah, what's also great when it comes to horror within historical fiction, I think what's perhaps really intriguing is the fact that the characters don't have access to things like technology, if that makes sense. They don't have access to like phones or email or like cars. They have like different types of transportation, um, the internet or whatever. Because a lot of times within the horror genre, a lot of times characters, if there's something freaky and creeping them out, they have access to technology. They have access to like flashlights or their cell phones or the internet or a car that they can escape in. It's kind of easy for characters to kind of maneuver and get information in modern contemporary horror. So I think in historical fiction horror, there's kind of this added bonus of just uncertainty and unpredictability, and the characters really having to fend for themselves and really fight for their lives. And yeah, they can't rely on the information of the internet. They can't really rely on a fast, speedy vehicle to maneuver them around somewhere. They can't rely on, hey, I need a flashlight. I can pull my cell phone out and give me a flashlight like that. So I don't know. I honestly am not quite sure what it is about historical fiction horror that has really been getting to me. But I love that lack of technology. That's kind of the big thing that stands out for me in particular. But yeah, if you have a different opinion about that, why you think historical fiction horror might work, let me know. Um, and I think another big thing too when it comes to historical fiction horror, uh, it's always a good way to commentate on our contemporary modern society. You know what I mean? I think that's a really good way to do that, and um, kind of have that comparison in a weird sort of way. Because a lot of times, historical fiction horror, it's definitely kind of playing into something that might be scaring us in our modern day society, but kind of looking at it from a different historical perspective, I suppose, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's get going, guys. I have actually 12 recommendations for this particular video. And you guys, because of my new setup, because I have a whole new setup when it comes to my videos, because I'm now using like my phone and everything, the camera is actually up a lot higher, and I normally sit down and look at my phone when I'm doing this. And so yeah, my computer is actually like way over here. If you can't tell, I'm kind of looking down at it. So I'm going to be kind of just standing here. My focus is going to be looking down, reading off of the synopsises on Goodreads. So yeah, if you want to watch this video, listen to it in the background, have your Goodreads up at the same time, you might want to go check out these books as I go through them. So yeah, let's get going, you guys. The first book I have here is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and I recently did read this book this year. I freaking loved this book. It's so good. If you love something like Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, I think you might want to check this out. So yeah, what is The Hacienda about? In the overthrow of the Mexican government, Beatrice's father is executed and her home destroyed. When handsome Don Rodolfo proposes, Beatrice ignores the rumors surrounding his first wife's sudden demise, choosing instead to seize the security his estate in the countryside provides. She will have her own home again, no matter the cost. But the hacienda is not the sanctuary she imagined. When Rodolfo returns to work in the capital, visions and voices evade Beatrice's sleep. The weight of invisible eyes follows her every move. Rodolfo's sister, Juana, scoffs at Beatrice's fears. But why does she refuse to enter the house at night? Why does the cook burn copal incense at the edge of the kitchen and mark its doorway with strange symbols? What really happened to the first wife of Rodolfo? Beatrice only knows two things for certain. Something is wrong with the hacienda, and no one there will help her except for a really hot priest. You guys, let me add that right there at the very end of the synopsis. So yeah, a great book if you have not read it yet, you guys. Yeah, definitely really eerie and spooky and creepy. Ooh, gave me all sorts of chills. Next up, we have a classic within the historical fiction horror genre, so I definitely had to include this, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. This is the story of Louis, as told in his own words of his journey through mortal and immortal life. Louis recounts how he became a vampire at the hands of the radiant and sinister Lestat, and how he became indoctrinated unwillingly into the vampire way of life. His story ebbs and flows through the streets of New Orleans, defying crucial moments such as his discovery of the exquisite, lost young child Claudia, wanting not to hurt but to comfort her with the last breaths of humanity he has inside. Yet he makes Claudia a vampire, trapping her womanly passion, will, and intelligence into the body of a small child. Louis and Claudia form a seemingly unbreakable alliance, and even settle down for a while in the opulent French quarter. Louis remembers Claudia's struggles to understand herself and the hatred they both have for Lestat that sends them halfway across the world to seek others of their kind. Louis and Claudia are desperate to find somewhere they belong, to find others who understand, and someone who knows what and why they are. Yes, I love Interview with the Vampire. You guys, I've read that book so many times, especially kind of around the Halloween spooky time of the year. It's always a great time. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Nomi, you know, guys, I still cannot figure out how to pronounce the main heroine's name in this book. I got a pronunciation guide for it way back when, and I still didn't quite understand what the pronunciation was even saying. No, I think it's Nomi. She heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she will find. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, is a stranger, and Nomi knows a little about the region. Nomi is also an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, and her chic gowns and perfect red lipstick are more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough and smart, with an indomitable will, and she is not afraid, not of her cousin's new husband, who is both menacing and alluring, not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems to be fascinated by Nomi, and not even of the house itself, which begins to evade Nomi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Her only ally is the inhospitable abode, or in this inhospitable abode, is the family's youngest son. Shy and gentle, he seems to want to help Nomi, but might also be hiding dark knowledge of his family's past, for there are many secrets behind the walls of High Place. The family's once colossal wealth it has faded, and faded mining empire kept them from prying eyes. But as Nomi digs deeper, she unearths stories of violence and madness. Oh my god. Seriously, I loved Mexican Gothic, you guys. It was just so freaking good. It's like, once you get to the big twist of the novel, it's like, say what? It's so shocking and unexpected. I got another book here by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and that is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. Carlotta Moreau. She's a young woman growing up in a distant and luxurious estate, safe from the conflict and strife of the Yucatan Peninsula, the only daughter of either a genius or a madman. Then we have Montgomery Lawton, a melancholic overseer with a tragic past and a propensity for alcohol, an outcast who assists Dr. Moreau with his scientific experiments, which are financed by the Lizaldes, owners of a magnificent hacienda and plentiful coffers. And then we have the hybrids, the fruits of the doctor's labor, destined to blindly obey their creator and remain in the shadows, a motley group of part human, part animal monstrosities. all of them living in a perfectly balanced and static world, which is jolted by the abrupt arrival of Eduardo Lizalde, the charming and careless son of Dr. Moreau's patron, who will unwittingly begin a dangerous chain reaction. Ooh, sounds great, you guys. Yes. Next up, we have The Jeep by Alma Katsu. Someone or something is haunting the ship. That is the only way to explain the series of misfortunes that had plagued the passengers of the Titanic from the moment they set sail. The Titanic's passengers expected to enjoy an experience befitting the much heralded ship's maiden voyage, but instead, amid mysterious disappearances and sudden deaths, find themselves in an eerie, unsettling twilight zone. While some of the guests and crew shrug off strange occurrences, several, including maid Annie Hebley, guest Mark Fletcher, and millionaires Madeline Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim, are convinced there's something more sinister going on, and then disaster strikes. And then years later, Annie, who is the maid, she has survived the sinking of the Titanic, and now she is like a nurse on the Britannia, or no, the Britannic. And the Britannic has now been newly refitted as a hospital ship to support British forces fighting during World War One. When she happens across an unconscious Mark Fletcher, who is also a passenger on the Titanic, he is now a soldier, and she is at first thrilled and relieved to learn that he too survived the tragic night 4 years earlier, but soon his presence awakens deep buried feelings and secrets, forcing her to reckon with the demons of her past as they both discover that the terror may not yet be over. Okay, you guys, I did read this book a couple years ago when it first came out. I did not really like it that much. For the purposes of this video, because it is an example of historical fiction and horror, I did want to include it on this list because you may be interested in it. I did honestly not quite like this book that much, and I was really looking forward to it because it takes place on both the Titanic and the Britannic. And yeah, there were just a lot of things about the book that did not entirely work for me, that I felt were kind of executed not in the direction that it needed to go in. But yeah, I didn't like it, but if you do love the historical fiction horror genre, you may want to check it out yourself and form your own opinion about it. We have another Alma Katsu book here, and that is The Hunger. Evil is invisible, and it's everywhere. That is the only way to explain the series of misfortunes that have plagued the wagon train known as the Donner Party. You guys. Depleted rations, bitter quarrels, and the mysterious death of a little boy have driven the isolated travelers to the brink of madness. Though they dream of what awaits them in the West, long-buried secrets begin to emerge, and dissent among them escalates to the point of murder and chaos, unknowingly propelling them into one of the deadliest and most disastrous Western adventures in American history. Yes, I have not got to this yet. I'm hoping, since this is also by Alma Katsu, I'm really hoping I like this way more than The Deep. And yeah, really, all I know about the Donner Party is it had a lot to do with like cannibalism, didn't it? Didn't everybody like eat each other? Something grotesque like that. I am definitely pretty excited to get to this sometime in the future. And then I have a third book here also by Alma Katsu, and that is The Fervor. I love her titles: The Deep, The Hunger, The Fervor. It's straight into the point. So yeah, let's see. It's 1944 as World War II rages on. The threat has come to the home front and remote corner of Idaho. What does that say? In the remote corner of, I'll just say Idaho. Miko, yeah, okay, that's a name. I thought that was like a city or something within Idaho. Never mind. Here, let me start over, you guys, because I feel like it's all over the place. Okay, so it's 1984, or not 1984, good God. It's 1944. I'll make it through this plot synopsis, you guys. As World War II rages on, the threat has come to the home front. In a remote corner of Idaho, Miko Briggs and her daughter, Aiko, I think is how it's pronounced, Aiko, are desperate to return home. Following Miko's husband's enlistment as an Air Force pilot in the Pacific months prior, Miko and Aiko were taken from their home in Seattle and sent to one of the internment camps in the West. It didn't matter that Aiko was American-born. They were Japanese, and therefore considered a threat by the American government. We know how this story is going. Mother and daughter attempt to hold on to elements of their old life in the camp when a mysterious disease begins to spread among those interned. What starts as a minor cold quickly becomes spontaneous fits of violence and aggression, even death. And when a disconcerting team of doctors arrive, Nearly more threatening than the illness itself, Miko and her daughter team up with a newspaper reporter and widowed missionary to investigate, and it becomes clear to them that something more sinister is afoot. A demon from the stories of Miko's childhood, hell bent on infiltrating their already strange world. Ooh, this sounds good. You guys, it's definitely making me think of like season 2 of the TV show The Terror, because yeah, season 2 of that show, it was all about kind of the Japanese internment in America and whatnot, and I really love that season. Because yeah, it also is thrown in like a lot of Japanese mythology and storytelling and whatnot. And yeah, speaking of the show The Terror, the next book here that I have is The Terror by Dan Simons, which is what the very first season of that show was based off of, and I absolutely loved that season. You guys, oh my goodness. The men on board HMS Terror have every expectation of triumph. As part of the 1845 Franklin expedition, the first steam-powered vessels ever to search for the legendary Northwest Passage, they are as scientifically supported an enterprise as has ever set forth. As they enter a second summer in the Arctic Circle without a thaw, though they are stranded in a nightmarish landscape of encroaching ice and darkness. Endlessly cold with diminishing rations, 126 men fight to survive with poisonous food, a dwindling supply of coal, and ships buckling in the grip of crushing ice. But their real enemy is far more terrifying. There is something out there in the frigid darkness, an unseen predator stalking their ship, a monstrous terror constantly clawing to get in. When the expedition's leader, Sir John Franklin, meets a terrible death, they're just letting you know right there. It's spoiler, Goodreads, good God. When their captain meets a terrible death, Captain Francis Crozier takes command and leads his surviving crewmen on a last desperate attempt to flee south across the ice. With them travels an Inuit woman who cannot speak and who may be the key to survival, or the harbinger of their deaths. But as another winter approaches, as scurvy and starvation grow more terrible, and as the terror on the ice stalks them southward, Crozier and his men begin to fear that there is no escape. Oh my god, yes. Seriously, if you have not seen season 1 of The Terror, like I said, this book is based off of that, or the show is based off of this book, it's an experience. You guys, it is a ride. It's terrifying. It's nauseating on occasion. Ooh, but so good. I loved it. Next up, In the Garden of Spite by Camilla Bruce. Early in life, Bella Sorensen discovers the world is made only for men. They own everything, jobs, property, wives. But Belle understands what few others do. Where women are concerned, men are weak. A woman unhampered by scruples can take from them what she wants, and so Belle sets out to prove to the world that a woman can be just as ruthless, black-hearted, and single-minded as any man. Starting with her long-suffering husband, Mads, Belle embarks on a killing spree, the like of which has never been seen before nor since. And through it all, her kind older sister Nellie can only watch in horror as Belle's schemes to enrich herself and cut down the male population, good lord, come to a glorious, dreadful fruition. And yet, it does say it's based off of a real story, a real woman who committed a bunch of murders. I guess she was a serial killer of men back in Chicago in the 1900s, it looks like. I can't wait to get to this. I do have this book. It sounds pretty thrilling and exciting, good lord. Next up, Hyde by Craig Russell. Victorian Edinburgh. Captain Edward Henry Hyde is chief detective for the City of Edinburgh Police. As such, he is responsible for investigating all murders and serious crimes in the city. Hyde is a striking but severe-looking man who provokes unease and often fear in those who encounter him. Nevertheless, Edward Hyde is truly a good man, though he wrestles fiercely with his own unique demons. When Hyde finds himself at the scene of a heinous murder with no idea of how he got there or the events leading up to the discovery, his alarm is triggered on 2 levels. First, the crime scene is brutal and involves the threefold death, an ancient Celtic rite of sacrifice entangled with dark Scottish spiritual mythology. Second, Hyde's inability to remember any detail of his arrival at the crime scene makes him immediately fret about the secret he keeps from all but his physician. He suffers from a rare form of epilepsy that causes him to lose time, amnesiac absence where he cannot account for his actions, and nocturnal seizures that manifest themselves as vivid and lurid dreams. As Hyde begins his investigation of the murder in a city on edge, he finds himself not only searching for real-world clues, but trying to unravel the significance of the imagery and the other world of his dreaming. His investigation leads to the very places he fears, but has never fully imagined. If you can't kind of tell from that synopsis, it sort of sounds like a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't think it's an absolute total retelling of that story. I think it's kind of just taking some influences and nuances from that. Yeah, I'm definitely really looking forward to this when I get around to it. Horsemen, A Tale of Sleepy Hollow by Christina Henry. This is another book I own but I have not got around to yet, you guys. Everyone in Sleepy Hollow knows about the Horseman, but no one really believes in him, not even Ben Van Brunt's grandfather, Brom Bones, who was there when it was said the Horseman chased the upstart Crane out of town. Brom says that's just legend, the village gossips talking. 20 years after those storied events, the village is a quiet place. 14-year-old Ben loves to play Sleepy Hollow boys, reenacting the events Brom once lived through. But then Ben and a friend stumble across the headless body of a child, good God, a child, in the woods near the village. And the sinister discovery makes Ben question everything the adults in Sleepy Hollow have ever said. Could the Horseman be real after all? Or does something even more sinister stalk the woods? Oh my God, I do love me a good Sleepy Hollow retelling, you guys. Ooh. And the last recommendation I have here, The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starlane. Another book I do own and I'm desperately dying to get around to, especially after this synopsis I'm about to share. Practical, unassuming Jane Shoringfield has done the calculations and decided that the most secure path forward is this: a husband in a marriage of convenience who will allow her to remain independent and occupied with meaningful work. Her first choice, the dashing but reclusive Dr. Augustine Lawrence, agrees to her proposal with only one condition: that she must never visit Lindridge Hall, his crumbling family manor outside town. Yet on their wedding night, an accident strands her at his door in a pitch-black rainstorm, and she finds him changed. Gone is the bold, courageous surgeon, and in his place is a terrified, paranoid man, one who cannot tell reality from nightmare, and fears Jane is an apparition come to haunt him. By morning, Augustine is himself again, but Jane knows something is deeply wrong at Lindridge Hall, and with the man she has so hastily bound her safety to, set in a dark mirror version of post-war England, Starling crafts a new kind of Gothic horror from the bones of the beloved canon. This Crimson Peak-inspired story assembles, then upends every expectation set in place by Shirley Jackson and Rebecca, and will leave readers shaken, desperate to begin again as soon as they are finished. Yeah, that was what really intrigued me about this novel, because it compares it to things like books by Shirley Jackson, by Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier, and yeah, throwing in inspired by like Crimson Peak. I love Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak movie, guys. So yeah, a combination of all that, I was like, hell yes, give me this book. So you guys, that is it for this month's historical fiction, related to all things historical fiction, horror, terror, whatever it may be. In the comments below, have you guys read any of these books? Do you plan on reading any of them? Does the historical fiction horror genre even appeal to you? And if it does, what is it that does appeal to you? Like I said, what kind of appeals to me about it is definitely, I think it's trying to commentate a lot of times on our modern contemporary society. And yeah, I also just like the whole thing of just lack of the just overall general technology. It just makes it a lot more gripping and terrifying, I think. So yeah, you guys, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.